Hello and welcome to another... Oh, goodness. Hello and welcome to another technical takedown the hard way. In today's video, we are going to be talking old school versus new school. You know, guys, I watch quite a few YouTubers and I love watching them. One of the best YouTube videos that I've ever watched on Overlanding was the Camel series with the Land Rover Discovery series ones. For me, this evoked something inside me. You know, I was already interested in overlanding already, but when I watched these videos with these guys hauling these discoveries, whipping them to within an inch of their lives, and just seeing these Land Rovers just keep taking the abuse and they just keep going, I just thought to myself, wow, that is one incredible machine, really. And the guys that were doing this, that were doing the Camel series, you know, which was supposed to be a race, but there was so much camaraderie, there was so much friendship building, you know, motivating each other, stopping to help one another. It had nothing to do with racing. It was supposed to be a race, but you could see quite clearly that these guys didn't see it as a race. They saw it as an adventure. They saw it as an exercise on how to build and how to communicate and how to get out of situations without having to call somebody else to get you out of that situation. Whatever you did, especially on the African continent, you could... Africa had the resources right there and then in order to get you out of that situation. And that's the part about the Camel series that I love. Something which has had a great impact on who I am as a person and the way I look at overlanding overall. So for me, the Camel series, I don't know if you guys have watched it. If you haven't watched it, I'm going to try and find a link. I'll put a link inside the description. Please take a watch of it. You will not regret it. So anyway, I do like that. I do love it. But like everybody else, or the other old school overlanders, you could tell that it has had a massive impact on the overlanding community. Now, why do I say that? Because you could see that overlanders now, especially the old school ones, the guys that teach you everything, that have had decades worth of experience, they tend to struggle with realizing that engineering has caught up with them. And the things that they didn't think they could do even 10 years ago have changed. And this is fundamentally important for me because I'm getting most of my information from those overlanders that are, you know, mature in their experience. Very important for me to be careful about what I'm hearing from each of these overlanders when they are talking. I've been listening to Andrew St. Pierre White, and I've heard him speak quite frankly about airbag suspension. Andrew St. Pierre White does not believe that airbag suspension, you know, that is variable suspension, he doesn't believe that it's good for overlanding. He believes that it is extremely difficult to fix when they do need repairing. And there are too many sensors there, and if those sensors need to be taken out, if they need to be replaced, you could be waiting weeks, and then it needs to be properly calibrated once again, and you're not going to find that in a little mechanics shop in the middle of Mombasa. So for him, he said, you know, stick with the tried and tested, you know, leaf springs, or, you know, stay with the tried and tested mechanical suspension. You know, the heavy load suspension, because those ones you can't go wrong, right? Those ones you are going to be also reparable on the road, even in the most rural places. Anyone who has a welder, and there are welders all over every African country, right? There are welders everywhere, okay? Because that's how they repair their cars in Africa. So if you can find that, if you can find a welder, you can repair it. It's like that. So simplicity is very important. And the cars today are far from simple. And that's because of the regulations that have been placed on them today. They need to make sure that these cars are as safe and as efficient as possible, which means they need to make them lighter in some cases, right? They need to make sure that the cars are not using heavy components, so they're not burning extra fuel that they don't need, right? But they also need to make sure that the car now has 10 airbags, airbag for your tongue, they just fill the car now with airbags. I remember the days when you didn't even have airbags in cars. In fact, I remember when it was a novel thing, oh, you got an airbag on your steering wheel. That was something that was unheard of, in the 80s. They had some cars, but it wasn't mainstream. But now, you'd be hard to find a car that doesn't have at least 10 airbags inside. A new car that doesn't have at least 10 airbags in it. Really, safety is paramount. And when it comes to all those safety, that safety equipment is heavy. Of course, it is very heavy. So they have to. So they have to put those in the cars, and of course, the cars have got to carry that all around. Most of those cars, a lot of those cars carry that safety equipment, like the airbags around. They carry them around for the entirety of their lives, and they never use it. If you can imagine. Hopefully, most of the times they don't use them, right? It's a difficult thing to get your airbags to go off, right? So that's one thing you need to realize. Cars are getting heavier for specific reasons. The technology today has made cars better, so much better, and technology is evolving so quickly, right? It's difficult for a manufacturer to turn around and talk about all the things on a vehicle that has progressed, that has been made better over time. The airbag suspension is one of those things. Airbag suspension is a lot more reliable than what it was 10 years ago. So how would he know that airbag suspension is not?
How would he know?
What are you doing?
The guy that's looking at the thermite came here. How would he know?
What? Looking at the what? How would he know that? Unless he had been out on an adventure himself and he had ran into that problem. Now, don't get me wrong. I've heard about stories about people going out with airbag suspension, and those airbag suspensions actually having problems with airbag suspensions right here on normal roads. There's a guy named, I think there's a YouTube channel called The Doctor's Garage where he speaks about his airbag suspension on his Discovery 5. And so he got a hole in one of the airbags. He's never taken his car off-road. So, that's a big negative, really, if you think about it. I mean, you're not going to expect your Land Rover Discovery 5 to have problems with the suspension after only 5 years of it existing. You're expecting that suspension to last for the entirety of the lifetime of that car. But yeah, he has had problems. Now I'm going to get a newer vehicle. Maybe. Likely that I'm going to get a newer vehicle. If I get a newer vehicle, I'm going to have to rely on the engineering. And that, I think, is one thing that we need to think about. We need to think more about the fact that There is always progress. You know, cars are always being made better. And that is because, you know, Land Rover doesn't make the airbag suspension, the airbags, the actual airbags. They don't make them, right? They get somebody else to make them for them. And that company specifically designs these airbags. But they don't just design them and leave them and they're like, okay, then that's it. What they'll do is they'll design it and they'll continuously make it better. They'll, you know, so there's always a constant evolution in the airbags. That's just one, we're just giving one example here, but this is how it generally goes with all components inside a vehicle. So what's my point? I'm trying to say is that you need to be careful about the old school guys, because a lot of those old school guys are caught up in old school thinking and they don't progress their thinking, even though technology is progressing so quickly. It's unbelievable. Look at your phone. Look at your phone now and look at the phones that were about 10 years ago. They, you know, absolutely different. There's so much more you could do with them now. It's the same with all technology, especially with the components from a highly sophisticated vehicle. So that you need to think about the sources of information. I'm not saying that Andrew St. Pierre White is old school and he's only got this old school way of thinking, even though he probably does actually. He does talk a lot about technology and about things, about being forward thinking and about how technology can make overlanding safer, more efficient, and cheaper as well, right? Sorry. There was a time where we would have the vehicles. I can't even remember what I was doing. That was the gas man, I think. That was the gas man. So he just strolled in with the wife. Anyway, so there was a time where you would have to think about the new technology being brought in, because, you know, technology, when they first introduced something, remember the iDrive system on BMWs? Nobody liked it. Now everybody likes it. You know, it takes time to become accustomed to some certain types of technology. And when you do realize that it, you know, certain things, you know, you can't live without it after you've lived with it for a while, after you've used it for a while. We're not going to be taking any oil burners. We're not going to be taking any gas cylinders. We can't do anything like that. We have to rely on the one thing that is plentiful in Africa, and that is the sun. Plenty of sunshine. So we're going to rely on that in order to charge our batteries so we can cook using our mobile ceramic plates that we're going to be taking with us. So, you know, that is us relying on the technology. And I think that more people should rely on the technology and think very carefully about their sources of information. I'm not saying that you shouldn't listen to these old school guys, but you just need to be selective with the types of information that they are giving you. You need to know who these people are, you know, individually, okay? And that's it. Basically, they're all good sources of information, but guys, it's 2022 and things are changing. It's time for you to change with the times. Thank you for watching.